Economic Development Authority meeting to order at 5:03 p.m. on February 18th, 2021. Roll call. Michael Piat.
Here.
Alder Johnson.
Here.
John Kellerwertz.
Here.
Glenn Sherman.
Then as a FYI, Wendy.
And is it Tara or Tara?
Tara.
Tara.
Yep, here.
All right. And so Glenn Sherman excused. All right, we'll move to agenda item C, approval of the agenda. Approval of the agenda for February 18th, 2021, meeting of the Economic Development Authority. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Perfect. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. We'll go to D, minutes. Approval of the minutes from the November 9th, 2020 meeting of the Economic Development Authority. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Tara. Is there a second?
Second. Go ahead.
All right, there's a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. E, regular business. 1, appointment of Neil as Secretary of the Economic Development Authority. I've heard your last name multiple times, but I'm not even going to attempt it.
It's like, I think there may be a couple of other Neils in the building, but Neil's usually fine. But in case anyone wants to know, it's Stechschulte. So
Schulte. I'll try to remember that. Welcome.
we'll have plenty of practice, Pam. Not a problem. So
Nationality, Neil.
it's a little German, but much to my mom's Irish side, much to her chagrin. So, but the German holds out in this case. So,
All right.
Schulte. Got it. Well, welcome. And you
Thank you.
are coming from Sun Prairie?
Yep. Was the economic development director there for 14 years. And prior to that, I was a planner for MSA Professional Services in Madison, Wisconsin for 7 years. And then I did a 2-year stint as a regional economic director for a 6-county area in Northwest Illinois prior to that. So just about 25 years of doing this. So just getting warmed up though.
Well, we're glad to have you.
Yeah, excellent.
Thank you.
Welcome again.
Thank you.
All right. Number 2, consideration with possible action on the shipyard.
May I interrupt for a moment, please?
Yes,
We need-
please.
We do need to have a vote for that, please.
For the
For the
appointment?
appointment.
For the appointment, please. Yes.
Oh, my fault. All right. Is there a motion to appoint Neil as Secretary of the EDA?
So moved.
There's
Second
a motion.
that.
Is there a second?
Second that.
Second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you, Jessica.
Secretary of the- All right. Number 2, consideration with possible action on the Shipyard Corridor Brownfields Study and Redevelopment Guide.
All right. I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully you're seeing it, the PowerPoint.
Got it.
Cool. All right. So we felt it was appropriate to approve this document through the EDA, as this body serves as the city's official Brownfields Advisory Committee, as you're all well aware, as recognized by the US EPA. So you are all very aware. You've seen staff's work in spending our EPA grant funds on assessing brownfield sites, especially in that South Broadway corridor. We've spent a lot of time here the past few years. The EPA has definitely taken notice of that. They realize that this is a federally recognized opportunity zone. And it's really an area that's primed for redevelopment. They're paying attention to our work with the shipyard, our work with the coal piles. They understand all the challenges we've got with this area, and that we're really being very strategic with our efforts to make some positive improvements to it. So with that, they've come to us now with 2 very unique technical assistance grants. These have been opportunities that they've actually come to us and said, hey, you guys should really use this service that we will give to you for free, something we didn't really have to apply for. to focus efforts on that South Broadway area. The first of these two technical assistance grant opportunities that we've taken advantage of was the Building Blocks program, which we did early last year before COVID. That's why you see a picture of all those people not wearing masks. This is just before COVID, actually. So with that, we had obviously a neighborhood meeting. It was a very well attended. I believe this was at the Tank School with over 100 people in it, near 100 people in attendance. We did site visits. We walked up and down the corridor. We got on a bus and drove the consultants and some stakeholders around. And then we did a day-long workshop with key stakeholders to really develop a clear list of strategies that we could take as a community to incentivize redevelopment and improvements to the area. This was a pretty large area. It actually went pretty much all the way from Walnut, way down, way past the along South Broadway, kind of hugging Ashland, and then going all the way to the Fox River. The strategies that we developed with this were somewhat broad in scope, just like the area. And one of those strategies on that list was to prepare a more focused study and a redevelopment guide for some key target areas, which brings us now to this document, which we brought for you to review today. And our second technical assistance opportunity that EPA granted us. So this is just a deeper dive into this target area, just north of Mason, right along Broadway, all the way up to Howard, kind of between Maple and Pearl. So late last year, our team worked with EPA and our consultants with Stantec to conduct this really depth analysis of the target area to get a clear picture of all the barriers to redevelopment. They really did a deep dive on this. They looked at all of our previous planning efforts in this area that applied dating back years. And really the reason for doing that was they want to make sure that with this new document, they're building on all the work that we've already done, and they're not contradicting it. They've also, they took the temperature with more recent efforts and proposals for this area. They looked at all the momentum with the shipyard project, with the merge and slingshot developments, just to name a couple. And you can't really see any of these maps, but this is just to give you an idea of just the level of detail that we went into with understanding our existing conditions here. We looked at stormwater management. We looked at geotech, infrastructure, land uses. We did a more comprehensive brownfield inventory, looking at each individual parcel in this target area and trying to understand what are the potential contaminants on each parcel. We also had stakeholder discussions with the Broadway bid and the neighborhood association. We brought in some developers interested in the area to talk about land uses and density and what they saw as the potential for redevelopment in these areas. Real quick before we dive into that, I'll just kind of mention that really the purpose of all of this was to make very specific recommendations and guidance for staff and for EDA and RDA with this area to really use as a tool for how we invest our EPA grant dollars. Of course, we've got our assessment grant. We're going to have a new revolving loan fund program for Brownfields here soon. And so this will help us, just be more strategic with those dollars for this area. Also, this would really help the redevelopment authority set clear parameters for any future requests for proposals that we put out on lands that we own, the redevelopment authority owns in this area. It's a tool that we can give developers interested in our sites, just give them the document, and this will allow them to have a very clear picture on all the barriers to redevelopment, and then also some very clear recommendations and guidelines to address those barriers. And so these are some images of the recommendations that came out of this study and guidance manual. So looking at land use, we're being fairly broad. We want to be flexible because, of course, pressure with development changes over time. I think one thing that's more likely than not, we know pretty well that we're going to need housing. We know we need housing now. We're going to need more of it in the future. I think that's safe to say. So we definitely would like to see more opportunities for higher densities of housing. Multifamily, we want to see multiple stories, so allowing for 3, 4, maybe 5-story buildings here to help expand just the density beyond the downtown area, the downtown core. And another major takeaway that we got with this study is creating more connections, not just with roadways and sidewalks, which we see here, but also with our infrastructure, our green infrastructure primarily. Many of you might know that this area right here, that big blue line, actually kind of takes the shape of the slough that used to exist here years ago. And back in the 1800s and before, that slough was filled in, and today it causes many issues with stormwater management and flooding. So one of the recommendations that the team had was to create a greenway, which would be opportunity for green infrastructure to help address some of those stormwater issues, but also to connect Seymour Park here to the west through this area and all the way down to the actual shipyard site. Here's just another more detailed look at the recommendations that we've got in this plan. I should mention, so looking at colors, yellow typically represents residential, red, more mixed use in nature. We did look at kind of market conditions as well for industry. And obviously we know right now in today's world, retail, it's tough. We want to create opportunities for retail to exist. We know if we have a lot more housing, there's going to be more opportunity for retail, but it's not going to be as much demand for that ground floor retail space as one might like. Here's more of a massing concept. These are just concepts, of course. They're not specific plans, just some ideas of what could be based on all the recommendations that came out of this plan and looking at kind of the parameters we're trying to set for the future. Took even a deeper dive into some specific sites. This is one of them, the Badger Sheet Metal site. We see this as a catalyst opportunity. The property that's owned by the Redevelopment Authority. And so when the Redevelopment Authority controls the site, obviously we have a lot better control over the future of how that develops. So it's concepts like this that you see here that we'll really be able to use as the city to help facilitate specific redevelopment efforts. So we'll be using these kinds of images in our attempts to attract developers to put out requests for proposal and say, here, developer, this is something that our community has kind of been vetted through our community. This is something that we would like to see. This fits all of our previous planning efforts. So that'll provide them with very clear direction as to what they could put forward and get likely approved. So that's kind of my song and dance. I wanted to make sure we had plenty of time for discussion and questions.
You've been doing some work.
We've been busy.
It's an amazing opportunity. That's so great that they reached out to you guys. I think that's a testament to the good work you've been doing with the
Thank you.
Brownfields.
Yeah, we're very fortunate to have a great relationship with the EPA. They've been very good partners to us.
Mhm.
Yeah, this is, I think, a rare opportunity. I don't think the EPA goes to many cities and offers this kind of guidance, but they recognize all the work that we've been doing and want to offer more guidance for us.
Yeah, great work, Matt. I mean, everything looks really great, and I think that it'll be very attractive for developers in the near future. I have one question. So as you guys are working, these concepts out, have you guys talked to like the small business owners around that area and what's their input in it? I mean, obviously it's going to be exciting because it's like new residents and it'll bring in more business, but have you guys gotten their input?
So probably 2, maybe 3 years ago now, we've done a lot of outreach in this area. First of all, we realized with the shipyard development in particular, that would have just a huge impact on the whole neighborhood. And so we wanted to work very closely with residents and business owners on the future of that site and the neighborhood as a whole. So we've done a lot of surveying. We've done door-to-door surveys in the neighborhood. We've held open house meetings that have been very well attended, like the one you saw in the presentation. We've done direct paper surveys to business owners and business managers. So it went to all that's in the South Broadway corridor. That was probably a couple of years ago. We've done more meetings since then. And with this particular effort, because it was during the pandemic, we also had a very short timeline with this opportunity. It was kind of one of those situations where the EPA needed to finish it before the end of the year, and it was like, here, Green Bay, do you want to do this? If you do, you need to do it now. So we didn't get as much opportunity to do outreach with this, but we did have stakeholder meetings, which the Business Improvement District, Brian, was part of those conversations.
Okay, that's fantastic. I'm glad that you guys are getting their input in this. So yeah, no, I mean, good job. I mean, everything looks really great. And the opportunity that you guys got to do this is it's amazing. So yeah, good work.
Thank you.
Matt, are you able to throw that map up on the screen again?
Yes. Which one would you like?
Good question. I guess they're all kind of maps. The one that shows like the top-down view, aerial view of, it was one of the first ones. Yeah, let's look at this one here. So, one of the things as I'm looking at this, and of course I see the greenway, and I presume that's just recognizing that piece of property there is probably unbuildable given the propensity to flood from the slough. Would that be an accurate assessment?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, we've done a lot of good work with infrastructure in this area. As you're aware, we've got the new lift station, which should help. Mm-hmm. But this, it would kind of do a couple things. It would be a great connector for people along the greenway to Seymour Park, to the neighborhood, and then to the shipyard. But then also, kind of soak up some of the stormwater that is likely going to build or pool in this area. Yep.
Okay. And I'm going to connect this all together. So when we look at the intersection of Arndt and Broadway, which is owned by the RDA, and that was originally where you may recall the Skogan had proposed the construction of his concert hall. Is there a reason that we're looking to do a park there as opposed to construction? In fact, if if I recall correctly, I thought that even some of the early discussions with merger urban development were looking at that being a parking lot.
Yes, that was actually with Breakthrough. They were
Was that
wanting
a breakthrough conversation?
that was a breakthrough conversation. With this, I'm not sure if it's a recommendation
Right.
from our consultants and from EPA. I think we would support that a portion of this be allowed for people to cross through and to get to the shipyard and to soak up stormwater. But I think there's still opportunity for some development on the site. Parking lot, maybe if we need it.
No, and I don't like it as a parking lot.
I don't need it.
If I were to put this in priority, I'd say, some type of development, then green space, then parking lot. But I was just curious if they were recommending park because, some geotechnical kind of said like, hey, there's some problems with building on here. I didn't know if there was a deeper reason to why they were recommending a park.
Not this one here. No, it has more to do, I think, with wanting to maintain a connection between shipyard all the way up through Seymour.
Okay. And then when you look at that space, that triangle space between the tracks, that's also recommended as a park. Yeah. And so obviously that's an area that's very interesting. And it's always flooded right now. But I mean, same kind of question for that. Would that potentially be a buildable site, or is that too complicated with those tracks in that area?
So that is actually owned by the railroad.
Oh, it is. Okay.
So, and I wouldn't put too much weight on the term park and like it being an official city park.
Understood. Yep. I get that.
More of just a park-like environment or green in nature.
And really where I'm going at it, Matt, more than anything, isn't necessarily whether it's a park or not so much as is it buildable?
Right. That one, probably not, just because the ownership situation. Something that I think we would really like to do is try to engage with CN and see if we can do something to beautify it, at least. I based on everything I've heard, it's not likely that they're going to be interested in selling that for redevelopment, but maybe we can
Or a piece of art. Or
do something to beautify it at least.
Sure. Okay. And then when we look at, so when I look at those engineering studies specifically related to the need for a stormwater retention pond over in the Seymour Park area, and that's something that's been talked about for a while. I know that the neighbors and particularly the neighborhood association aren't very fond of that idea. So it begs the question of, can, and I'm not trying to get into public infrastructure questions because I don't think that's necessarily the intent of this report, so much as it is for me to try to determine if that greenway, is it big enough, I guess, to provide, I guess, that level of retention. Are you overly familiar with that topic?
I'm a little bit familiar with it. As far as the greenway itself is envisioned with this, it's not meant to retain water. It's not supposed to be like an open like pond situation, running water. It's not like we're daylighting a stream. As it is just a depression where water can temporarily collect during an event, a stormwater event. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Well, and I don't think the retention pond in Seymour Park is necessarily meant to be standing water either.
Oh, okay.
Right. And so that's what I'm trying to see if the greenway, I just don't know from an acreage perspective, if the greenway is big enough to substitute for retention ponds in Seymour.
No, it isn't. I mean, I guess I can't say for sure. I'm not an engineer, but I would highly doubt it would. Okay. This greenway is not meant to replace plans for a retention pond that I'm aware of. I mean, DPW has not been involved.
Okay. Yeah. And I like the greenway idea. I like the connectivity to the neighborhood. I think that's really important, especially if we can, do it in such a way that actually creates a walkway through that area. I think of, something like a sculpture park or a little bit, think of it like a mini botanical garden or something, where the water wouldn't, if it does fill up with water, it doesn't hurt what's there, but still allows people to really move through there. I think you have some real opportunity to do some unique and distinct things there to connect the residential neighborhood to the shipyard area. And then sort of the last thing, well, second to last. So I see the call for multifamily residential. Nothing kills a downtown more than when you give people a reason not to continue to walk. Right. And so walkability to exist, you obviously need those retail storefronts. And I appreciate obviously the notion that, hey, there probably isn't enough demand to completely fill all this in. And clearly I understand that these are not proposals, right? But they're just guidelines. And when we get development agreements, those are the conversations we have. But just personally, I'd love for us to still try to find a way to continue to create, a storefront presence, that isn't residential housing immediately facing the street. That's just a preference, not anything that would rise to the level where I think we need to modify the report. But I think it's something we ought to all keep in the back of our minds so that we can continue that continuity, from the core of the district all the way to the shipyard. I think that should be our long-term vision.
It's my personal preference as well, Brian.
Yeah. Unfortunately, sometimes I think it's kind of like, our stomach is bigger than our appetite type of thing. So, or no, the other way around, right? Appetite's bigger than your stomach. Anyway, the last thing I wanted to bring up, is Cheryl still on the line? I can't see everybody.
Yes, she is.
Okay. And the only reason I bring it, Cheryl, you and I talked about this, and maybe it's the appropriate time to circle back even with Neil on this. But we had talked about codified design standards for the Broadway district. And there was a provision in this agreement that talked about the importance of design, because the construction, obviously, of the shipyard area is going to look a little bit different than the Broadway area. And then, of course, you have the rail yard area. And there's just, one of the problems or challenges that I think our downtown has is that there really isn't a solid design strategy or investment to really make these things look like districts, like unified districts. And one of the things, Neil, that had shared with Cheryl before you were on board is that as a district on Broadway can apply for technical grants through the state of Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. Not that much. I can maybe get $7,000, $8,000, $9,000. But what my hope was, heck, if we could get that, combine it maybe with some contract services, through Stantec or perhaps EPA funds, if there's any available yet, that would allow us to create a more comprehensive design strategy that can connect the shipyard, to the balance of the Broadway district. I'd love to see if there's a way that we can actually, do that, even if it's not part of this report. But maybe, I don't know if there's any additional funding out there that you think we could access in addition to the tech grant that I can get, to make that happen, but nor do I know how much it would cost to generate a report like that. So I'm looking for any kind of feedback that staff might have on that front.
Yeah, I think that's definitely, so I think this area would be very appropriate for something like that, Alder Johnson. I think that's, like I said, there's so much kind of looming on the horizon right now that could happen and go. And without, I agree, having some sort of standard in place for this area, whether that's just, certainly the public ways and connecting those ways, signage, landscaping, other hardscape things on the sidewalk and pedestrian areas, to actual building design elements would be certainly something I think it's certainly worth taking a look at if that was an interest on this. Building massing, I've seen some of the consultant obviously addressed some of that just from a very conceptual standpoint, but did not necessarily from an actual design standpoint go in and say, this is the area where we want to mass the buildings higher to create a corridor, or some very intentional design standard. But I think that's we'd happily take a look at that. I think that's it's probably something I would say we need to do sooner rather than later, just knowing what's in the pipeline right now. So I think that would be a very high priority for staff if that's something we're interested in doing.
Yeah, and I think on my end, I'm less concerned about codifying it for buildings themselves, recognizing, rights of private property owners and maybe doing more guidelines and recommendations. But I think codifying street design ought to be a priority because if if you ever come through the Broadway district, I could show you 10 different types of light poles that exist down here. It looks like a cheap yard sale. And as we're making the substantial investments in the shipyard area, substantial investments in the rail yard area, these things ought to have some commonality to them so that it does, like I say, look and feel like a district, and that we're not doing what's easy. We're doing what's good for the health of the downtown and our community.
Yeah, I'd say actually that's out of the two, Alder, I think that's the easier one for us to develop. We control those. Those are our light poles, right? I think in some and so standards on how we want to do those and come up with a plan, even possibly replace the ones we've got in there and come up with a schedule to do that. Absolutely. I think we can take a look at that right away and get something back to you for a recommendation pretty quick on that.
So the question then would be, is it okay if we pursue that outside of this report that's been presented to us? Since to have those separated, or, specifically since this particular report, the way that I understand it is funded by EPA, is there an opportunity to include that with the EPA funding, or would that need to be separate?
Yeah, with the EPA funding, we don't actually ever see the money. It goes directly from EPA to the consultant. So it would be a separate effort. It doesn't mean we can't take that work and put it right up into the same document. But we would just need to find out how to do that.
Okay. Well, let's continue that conversation offline then. But I thought that since we were looking at this, it would be the appropriate time at least to raise the discussion because I do think it's an important thing that we continue to take a look at. But overall, there's nothing in this report that to me needs application or is objectionable. Like I said, even the little pieces that I'd prefer to see something else, they're just guidelines. I think this is a wonderful blueprint to really help guide what's happening down there. So kudos to you, Matt. I know you've worked really hard on this, on those grants. Really appreciate all of your hard work. And something that you guys didn't mention, not that you would, but even that endowment for the arts grant that we received, for underneath Mason Street, it's just exciting things to see. That's just got to be exciting for you as staff to see the results and the fruit of your labor. So congrats.
We'll pass that along to Laura. Absolutely. Alder, thank you.
But I definitely agree with you, Alder. There's some stuff that's left over on Broadway from days gone past, right? It's almost like these great things happened and then they, got old and the lights don't work in the street anymore. And so you're absolutely right. Like Broadway needs that facelift along the corridor. So
yeah, it's almost like the elected leadership over here forgot that we need to maintain the things that we do.
What's the bid doing?
Good job.
Don't they have like 10 people on staff?
Or one. Actually, we're back to 2 now.
I saw that. That's great. I just wanted to comment on that report and say I really like that there's different kinds of housing put in there. I think, obviously, with my work now, affordable housing, how can we promote that and incorporate it into what looks best in the district and what will be best in the district? I know with downtown, it's been difficult filling in those first floor retail. We see a lot of those being empty. So what can we do? And I know that's not part of the EPA report, but just to keep in mind while looking at this report and wanting to fulfill those ideas, what can we do as a city to bring that in?
We'll certainly put words in the EPA's mouth, but I would assume that they would want to see a corridor that actually has sound design standards and actually implements a nice project as well. That makes it worth their investment as well. They don't want to point. They want to be able to point to this as a model project. They don't want it to be, gee, look at this kind of halfway thing that these guys did over here. Yeah, they want to see us do that too. So I would say I think those conversations are more than appropriate to be coordinated in part of this effort. So. Matt, did you need action from these folks on this?
Yes, I'm looking for approval.
Is there a motion?
Sorry, one more thing. So Also, as you guys are creating these concepts for the shipyard location, I think another important thing to note is the functionality of the area. So if you do like a community map of it, what are the resources that are around it? So if you guys are looking to get these mixed use buildings up and businesses start coming in, as you guys are working with developers, think about what type of community you're building within the shipyard area. So, we don't have, for instance, we don't have a grocery store really close downtown, or we don't have, there's new like salons popping up, but, what are the resources that are missing downtown that we need? So really think about it in a function aspect.
Yeah, thank you. We definitely try. Part of that first effort, the first technical assistance grant that we got with EPA that I mentioned earlier, we did a kind of a SWOT analysis where we really looked at our strengths in the neighborhood, what resources exist there. And so it's something we're definitely keeping our eye on.
Great.
Matt, I have an unfair question for you, and it's probably not answerable, but I'll put these, when you put these plans together, is timeline a part of your thinking? I mean, is there something that is this 5 years, something like that?
For implementation?
Yeah.
It depends on the document, honestly, but almost always, yes, there's always an implementation list of things we want to see accomplished. And sometimes we go as far to say we want to see this objective completed by such and such date. We try to be a little bit more loose with it just because it's been in pandemics and whatnot.
Sure.
As far as this goes, this one's really controlled by development. When the developer comes knocking, we want to be as ready. And so that's a big effort a big reason why we did this, so we can move as quickly as possible.
Are there developers knocking on doors?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's good to hear.
That's very good to hear.
Yeah.
Matt, and we've got, every year we do that State of the Broadway District, and we delayed it just a little bit this year. But one of the things that we oftentimes talk about is like, what's the new thing, right? Thing that you can show people. You just gave me it. So thank you.
Oh, good. I'm glad I could help.
Is there a motion to approve the Shipyard Corridor Study and Redevelopment Guide?
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Second.
Go ahead, Tara. You have it.
Second by Tara. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. And now we go to F, informational. 1, director's report.
All right, so week 3 here for me, starting up here, been hitting the ground running on lots of projects. Again, we've been very impressed with the number of things that are in the pipeline. Matt's not kidding when he says there are lots of things out there. Work going on. We're trying to, a couple of them have been hanging out there for a little while, so we're trying to kind of get them to the finish line in terms of some of the downtown area projects. Working on some additional grant resources. Matt had a good meeting today with some resources that we might be able to leverage in addition to some other areas related to the waterfront. Participated in a meeting, 2 meetings this morning, actually one with the town bid districts, which very excited to see the number of folks who were still participating and up and in on that one. Alder Johnson was in on that, did a great presentation today with some video features of some of the businesses. So it's great to see the downtown businesses still kind of putting their best effort in, trying to network and learn about what's going on and really be a resource for one another. So we're excited to see that. One of the things we need to do from our department is figure out more formally, I think, how we can work with the bid districts and support their efforts, especially coming out of the pandemic. Alder Johnson and I've had a very preliminary 10,000 foot, with something we know we need to talk about, but we haven't need to really get more formal on that a little bit. And the same goes for the Chamber of Commerce. The Green Bay Chamber is doing some great work in terms of things like workforce development, things that would kind of affect, I think, some of the things this body would be taking a look at. So it's, I think, figuring out how we can coordinate with their efforts a little better. is something certainly on my agenda. Also, probably looking at trying to do a little bit of a, I guess for lack of a better term, a TIF management plan, taking a look at all of our existing districts and really kind of trying to map out when we think they're going to close and when we're going to have the affordable housing aspects to those, and really get a good understanding so we can really, I think if it's out there, I think when staff talks about it, we kind of all know, and the various staff knows what each district is kind of doing, but really trying to have kind of a master approach on where we think all of those districts are at and be able to kind of a comprehensive one-stop spot to really be able to talk about that. One interesting invitation that came through today in terms of, again, I think something this body is more interested in terms of industrial development and attracting employers. Got invited to come address the Brown County administrators meeting in a couple of weeks. And they wanted me to specifically talk about how to not get leveraged against each other when private development comes to town. Which I've had some experience with in my previous life. So there are some things we think we can do. We're going to show everybody all of our cards, but there is certain things in terms of how we can communicate with one another when a development prospect comes to town to maybe avoid getting leveraged over the more than somebody might have to. So I think that is something that would be beneficial. All communities would benefit from that. It's easier said than done. It's, if somebody really wants a project, they're going to do what they're going to do. But I think there are ways to communicate to make sure when someone says, well, Village of Howard says they're offering us, $10 million. It's like, and I can actually call up Paul Everett, the administrator in Howard, and be like, yeah, we're only really offering them like $1 million over this. So actually have a conversation on what those kinds of things are. Again, it doesn't mean we're going to, completely never compete on those things, but I think it is something that could be advantageous to all of our communities if we could establish some ground rules, at least just how to work with each other and avoid getting unnecessarily leveraged against private development when we compete. So we'll see. It should be interesting to see how it goes. It's always easier said than done. Folks are always happy to say, "Yep, that sounds like a great idea," until that nice, big, sexy project comes along, and then then it's a little bit tougher to actually make it happen. But I think it is worth the effort. In addition, going forward, I think for this body, the RDA, even council, looking at having more of a formal project update in terms of kind of on a regular basis, really kind of what's going on, and more of a written summary to kind of let folks know where projects are at. This started off as an exercise for me, just trying to get my arms around everything that's going on in one file, and really got that to a point where I think, there's no reason we shouldn't be sharing that. Might be things that are, something's confidential. We will take the name out to protect whoever the interest is. But I think to have that information available going forward, hopefully starting in March, would be beneficial to certainly organizations like this one, as you guys are evaluating, kind of where you want to go on different things. I think that's kind of the main items where I'm at. I'm certainly, if there are any questions anybody might have, or if there's a specific project question, if I don't have it, I can certainly track it down and get it back to anyone if anybody has anything. Be happy to address it.
Not now.
Eventually, you guys know how to get a hold of me, though. That's fine.
Yes, now we know who you are.
That's right. I'm counting on it. I need to, I'm not as you guys can probably figure it out, I'm not exactly a quiet, shy individual. I'd rather be up there rolling up my sleeves, getting down and dirty on things. So if you ever need anything or have any questions on anything, do not hesitate to call.
Will do.
Anyone have any questions for Neil?
Not a question, but just welcome on board, Neil. We're happy to have you, and you have a city full of citizens who are here and ready to support you and your efforts too. So we're happy to have you.
Sounds good. Well, it sounds like we're going to be talking some more too, Tara. So I'm excited about that. So
same here.
Do we need any action on that? No, perfect.
Oh, ma'am.
All right. Anything else for Neil? Otherwise, we'll go to number 2, Brownfields program update.
I don't really have a robust presentation this time. It won't be too long before we're meeting again, so I'll have more information for you there. I'll give you a brief update on the revolving loan fund program, which we're trying to get up and running. It's taken a little bit more time than what we had anticipated, but we're working on it and got
Where's the seed money
our
coming for
consultants
that?
taking a crack at our policies and procedures documents right now.
Where the
We're working
seed
on
money
getting
is for
application
local.
forms and marketing materials prepared. So hopefully, if not by the next meeting, maybe the one after that, we'll have
Nice to
a
have a
program
local
to
one,
launch, and we'll be looking for your approval on that. So hopefully more to come soon.
Awesome.
Block right
Any
Yeah,
specific
just a quick question for you. And actually, I'm not sure if this isn't related to brownfields, but seems like an opportune time to ask the question. So this body had actually given staff direction to launch or initiate another that retail study. Do you remember that? And we were talking about like in recognizing industrial needs as well as retail and other things. Do you know where we're at with that?
Yes, there he is.
There's the gatekeeper.
There's Dave, that's right.
Gatekeeper, Dave and Wendy. So Wendy's here too. I don't know if her mic is going to work for her. She's sitting, but yeah, we have a final draft. We're just doing final edits, re-edits on the executive summary to make it a little more user-friendly. It was done by a commercial real estate company, and it reads like something done by a commercial real estate company. So we are really trying to make that, it's about a 5-page executive summary, make it really understandable to the common person. But yeah, it includes industrial, commercial, and also it dovetails multifamily, kind of with the housing study, but from a different angle, because again, this wasn't a planning firm that did it. We purposely chose a real estate marketing company. So we hoped to have it for this one, but you guys would not have liked that summary at all. So the next meeting you'll have it, I promise.
I don't know. I feel like I would nerd out over it, but you know.
Well, I can give it to you.
Thank you for that update.
Sure.
All right, we'll go to number 3. Date of next meeting is March 1st, 2021. Is there any other information before we adjourn? Gonna need new chair.
Perhaps just a question for the chair.
Yep.
If she has an answer. I presume at the next meeting, we will be selecting a new chair.
Should be on the agenda.
Okay, and obviously with your departure, I think we are now down 3 individuals.
Two or three, Matt?
I think it's 2. Mayor's
I thought it was
office.
2 plus Pam. And either way, we're down a couple folks.
Yeah.
You know, and so not only am I thinking about, you know, quorum considerations, but obviously, you know, who's going to take that chair spot over. So as it stands right now, it would seem to me that we have 3 potential candidates being Mike, Tara, and Glenn. And then, of course, you know, unless it's the vice chair that automatically rises up to that, I don't know what the protocol is. So I was just looking to see if we have some clarity around that.
I think my default position on that, Alder, would probably be that I think that we would ask Vice Chair Piat to take that first, to act as chair for that next meeting. And as part of that formal meeting would be designating actually and opening the floor somehow exactly what process would be selection of a chair actually at the meeting.
Okay. And the reason I wanted to bring it up now is because I think members of the board should be thinking about that before the next meeting. So that way nobody finds themselves on the hot seat unexpectedly.
No, you don't want it to happen? Because I'm pretty sure.
I cannot make the next meeting. I'll be out of country.
Okay.
So I can't even tap in via phone.
Okay. We may need to revisit that meeting date then. We'll have to see exactly what we do. So.
Okay.
That's usually the opportunity if the second in command's not there, that you vote him in as the chair.
Mike's
I thought
chair,
that's how it
yeah.
works. That's how it works in neighborhood associations, right?
Well, how it usually works is I wouldn't have let you guys know before the meeting. I'd tell you as I was leaving, but vote a vice chair first without knowing I was leaving, and then give the vice chair.
Give him a promotion right away.
All sneaky.
We will address that somehow at the next meeting. We'll have to obviously make sure we've got a quorum. I agree, Alder Johnson. So we're getting down there a little bit. We got to make sure we get enough people to conduct business. So,
Does staff have a running list of potential authority members of citizens from the realms of work, or
I don't know if,
members
I'm
need
not aware
to?
if we've got a pre-designated list, do we? But we probably have some ideas. If we sat down and put a list together, we could probably come up with some targets, but I don't believe we have one pre-established, I don't believe.
The mayor's office keeps a list of
Oh, okay.
interested parties, but, yeah, whether they're EDA appropriate or not, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Usually like some, like a target little business background and certainly financial, real estate, any sort of those backgrounds are helpful. You know, so we certainly need other perspectives as well, but those are always helpful, so.
Okay.
And so that I'm not thrown off, because I've never seen an agenda item after adjournment. Are we hanging on the call for that item? I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I believe that, we're just, all it is going to be just a general kind of discussion. It's nothing really for actionable. It's really just kind of present some information. I think we just did it because we looked in terms of it didn't need it to be as part of the formal actual of the committee. It's more of just an open workshop to discuss about what the role of this group could be going forward. It's certainly changed over time a little bit. So I just have, it's like 4 or 5 slides, Alder Johnson, to go through, and just really wanted to open it up for comments from this body here. And it was maybe something we may formally put on as an agenda item for action then at the next meeting if there's some feedback.
Right.
Okay, so you'd be looking for a motion to adjourn, and then we'll take that item up?
Dave,
Yes,
did you have
please.
anything else?
No, that's exactly what Brian said I was gonna say.
Oh.
The formal meeting's adjourned, we'll turn off the video, but because there is technically a quorum meeting, it's been noticed, and so the workshop is open, so to speak.
Okay. Move to adjourn?
So move.
Second?
Adjourned.
Somebody second?
I can second, can I?
Sure.
I'll second. We're adjourned.
I
Aye.
think Alder Johnson called a second, so you just need to vote.
Oh, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Sorry, whenever I say adjourn at any of my committee